Marty, they just made an announcement.
Yeah.
The inflation rate has dropped down to 2.7%, and boy, they're patting themselves on the back.
Oh, well, of course, Freeland came out with what did she say today? She said that it was 4 quarters in a row. No, 4 months in a row where it was within the target inflation rate of the Bank of Canada, and so the Bank of Canada's rate is 1 to 3. So they're scratching a victory out of this one, but you know this. I mean, I went through the data in detail, and sure, inflation's coming down, but for one and in a couple of categories, and for only one very simple reason: people are broke. People just can't afford things anymore. So of course they're not buying. They're not buying furniture. They're not buying. Clothing, shoes, and things like that. So those categories are coming right down, and supply and demand is working, and so therefore people can't afford those things. They're absolutely putting them off. So those things are becoming cheaper because the retailers are having to try and get people to buy a few things.
So I hadn't
But
considered that. That's actually a really
yeah,
good point. That like a lot of retailers are saying, okay, well, you know, we're gonna have to clearance some of these items, but for the most part, they've been flubbing the numbers. They've just been finding different ways of telling us that the numbers are
yeah,
great.
no, no,
When we're going to the grocery store and we're going to purchase major items, and they're more expensive than they've ever been.
well, and they show that. I mean, the data shows that, right? I think groceries is still up about 6% year over year inflation. I mean, my wife just came back. Like I get nervous. Like I don't go do the groceries very often. My wife goes and does the groceries. I can tell how much she spent by how many bags she comes in, and it's ridiculously low,
Mm.
right? When my wife comes in with about 3 bags or three of those boxes, I know it's $300. 3 bags would have been $150 like 2 years ago, but now she comes in with 3 bags. I'm afraid to ask. It's like, honey, what'd you spend? Like, I know it's going to be 3 bags, $150.
I saw a great
Um,
billboard, by the way. It was, I keep getting stronger as the years go by. Now I can lift $100 worth of groceries with just one
yeah,
hand.
yeah, yeah. Or people taking pictures of their $100 bill and saying, hey, have you seen the new $20 bill or whatever?
Right. But
But yeah,
this is something that's largely being ignored in this, though, is that CPI, Consumer Price Index, it's not even across the board. Not every country has the same CPI, so you can't compare American CPI
no.
to Canadian to British to anybody else. It's just the Canadian CPI. They do flub the numbers, but what are we measuring? We're measuring inflation. We're not we're not measuring just the effects of inflation, because that's what the CPI does. It's just a gauge for us to realize how much inflation is out there. And what is inflation really? Inflation is the expansion of the monetary supply. If there's more money out there, it's going to be high inflation. And yeah, we can flub the numbers to make it look like it's not the case, but at the end of the day, yeah, the monetary supply is still expanding, and it's expanding even more with this new budget that they have, and it's gonna get worse.
Yeah, and Freeland went on her little thing. I mean, we can't show the clip, right? Just so the viewers know, Clyde's still in the middle of his move, and he's doing this. We're doing the video the way we were doing him from Japan, so
Yeah,
we're
on my
saving,
laptop.
conserving. Yeah, we're conserving a little bit of memory. But she opened up she was at a conference or whatever, and she opened up by saying, "Hey, I want to share good news with Canadians." It's like, but nobody buys it. Nobody buys it. Nobody buys it. I mean, I did an analysis of the numbers and nobody buys it. I'm like, I'm simply sharing the numbers provided by the government, and I agree with everybody. Nobody's buying it. And to your point, they are going to they are making an adjustment. So next month they're making an adjustment to the basket of goods, and that's another thing that completely annoys me because inflation gets so high, people have to stop spending, and so certain categories fall off. So now they're going to say they're as an example, clothing and shoes. So people have cut all their spending to the bare essentials and are not buying new clothes and new shoes. So now next month the government is going to say, "Oh, check it out. Canadians aren't spending as much on clothes and shoes as they used to. So maybe we should decrease that as a component of the CPI and increase something else where
Mm-hmm.
like rent." which now will readjust the numbers and make them more palatable and harder for us to analyze.
Well, how can
It's
you analyze anything if your ruler
you
keeps changing? If
you
your ruler
can't.
is all over the place, the gauge that you use to measure stuff, like if centimeters were argued every month, we would never use
Yep.
them. We would never
No.
use them for any kind of measure. So, I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. We cannot.
It's incredibly hard. I mean, and what I love now is people have all these other better indexes, right? Like there's the Big Mac index. I love that one. I mean, somebody, guys have done that, right? Like you just track the value of a Big Mac year every year
The
and
last time, the last
compared to
time I went
different
to a
regions.
McDonald's, I
Yeah.
got the what was it, the quarter pounder BLT.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh no, it's just sandwich. That's it." And I just rolled through the drive-through because I was hungry,
Yeah.
but I didn't win a whole meal. Over $11.
Yep.
I thought I
I
had to double check that I didn't get overcharged or it was like some weird tip thing or no,
Clyde, I
$11.
was at a bar last Wednesday. Actually, maybe we should talk about that a little bit later. But I was at a bar at an event in Edmonton, and I turned over, said, "What do you want?" to a friend, and all right, 2 beers. Turned to the bartender, 2 beers, and then I'm standing there holding a $20 bill, just expecting to pay for 2 beers. I guess I hadn't been in the bar in a while. The bartender's just looking at me like I'm from another planet. I'm like, "What?" He's like, "It's $25." I'm like, 2 beers. I'm not even at a hockey game, man. I'm in a bar. Like he's like, sorry, man. It's like, the beers are whatever. They're $11. I'm like, wow, $11 for a beer in a bar. That's inflation. That's where you and I
Yeah.
see it, right? It's on things like that. It's no, that was inflation came out this week. I knew the
Well,
governments
one
would
more
try
one
to
more thing I
claim
want to add to this one
yeah, yeah.
is it doesn't take into account shrinkflation. Like it really doesn't. Because if you're you're not measuring grams of craft dinner, for example. You're measuring boxes of craft dinner. And if they put less into these items, and like this is what shrinkflation is, if nobody's heard this term, it's when the items get smaller. They actually put less in the box. You get less of it. There's less potato chips in your bag. There's more air than there is potato chips, and then they can not have to increase the price so dramatically and shock everybody.
It looks like a 1 liter bottle of dish soap, but it's 970. It looks like a 220-gram box of Kraft Dinner, but it's 200. Bacon's the most famous one, right? I mean, everybody always refers to it as a pound of bacon. Pound of bacon would have been about what, 450 grams. Nowadays, it's 350 grams. I mean, I don't know. I saw it. There's a 750 milliliters milk, right? So there was a liter milk and then the little 250 little square the little cubes. Now they have a 750. I'm like I saw that the other day. A 750. I'm like, a 750. Yeah, it's
For 750 probably, incidentally.
yeah, exactly.
That's where
No,
it's
no.
going.
Like I said, there of course, yes, inflation is coming down. That's natural. The measured inflation, I agree. Like the price, the money printing hasn't stopped.
Mhm.
It's actually a miracle that inflation, as reported, is coming down a little bit because the money printing behind the scene, and we've talked about the Bank of Canada, it's still out of control. And it's coming down because supply and demand's kicking in. People can't buy things. Airlines is another example. I mean, nobody's traveling, so airlines this summer are going to try and get people to travel a little bit, and they're going to drop their prices. But when you analyze it, it's nothing that the government did, and that's the thing that Freeland gets up on stage like, "Oh, we brought down inflation." It's like, how? Like, in fact, you guys, it's a miracle that it's coming down because you guys are doing things that are jacking it up.
Yeah, well,
Like
that's it. The only way that they can do that is by restraining themselves from spending so much money. The Bank of Canada can do it by raising interest rates. If they raise
Yep.
interest rates, it cuts down how much liquidity is in the market, and it
Actually,
encourages
today
people to
was
save. Actually, that's the whole idea.
geez, I can't remember where. Today was one of the first times I'd heard a journalist ask a politician, shouldn't the Bank of Canada keep increasing the rate? Somebody figured it out, because if the Bank of Canada drops the rate too quickly, it's just gonna make things worse. Yeah, wow, I can't remember, but somebody brought that up.
Well,
And
these
then
arguments haven't been around since like Barry Goldwater back in the day in the U.S.
yeah,
You know?
and overall, what's interesting right now, is that journalists and the media are jumping ship, right? They're abandoning the liberals. I mean, the liberals are. I wish we could play a couple of clips. There was another really interesting clip today. The liberals brought out the, I call it the abortion card, right?
Mm-hmm.
When usually they bring it out during election time or before election. I mean, we're 520 days away from the next election, so I'm surprised they brought out the abortion card. And there was a press conference, and I don't know, some minister of women's whatever, some obscure minister was talking about it, and she's trying to make her speech, and literally the journalists are like, why are you doing this? Why are you talking about this? We don't care, this is not an issue. And she kept bringing up things like how Poiliev had voted against something to do with abortion in 2008, and the journalists are literally like, really? Like, 1 out of 7 is using food banks, inflation is still high, interest rates are out of control, immigration's gone, we've had 5 out of 6 quarters of GDP decrease, whatever, and you guys want to talk about abortion.
So I did a
The
video
media is
about
jumping.
this, and what triggered this whole thing was there was some backbench conservative MP had in his riding a petition. It was a petition that got sponsored, and it was to bring abortion to an end in Canada.
Yeah.
And there was thousands of signatures from all over the country, and they signed that petition. And if a petition gets signed, then it's their job to bring it to the House, bring it to the floor. Yep. And that's exactly what he did. And then the liberals are playing this as if that this is the secret hidden agenda of the conservatives, which it isn't. It's actually a lot of people don't
Any
know.
party can do that. Any party can do that. That's what that lady MP, that minister, was trying to get. The message that she was saying, we want assurances from Pierre that he will not allow whatever backbenchers to bring forward private members' bills. He can't give that assurance. That's not how it works. I mean,
Yeah.
it's disappointing, but in some instances, but no, that's how if a private member wants to bring up a bill, he's got the right to do it. So
yeah. I mean, they're always touting that they want democracy and that democracy is backsliding and all this stuff, but then they don't like the fruits of democracy, like what actually happens in a democracy. There is a faction of the country that are pro-life, and they want to have their voice heard in Parliament. It doesn't mean that's what a majority of Canadians feel. It's not that
and you and I have talked about this. I mean, why try and silence a voice like that? Let him come out and have a short debate and then vote against it. I mean, if somebody wants to, I mean, there's a faction of society that still believes the earth is flat. And if one of those guys wants to raise 1,000 names on the signature and bring a private member's bill having earth declared flat, so be it.
Well, yeah, you could do anything. Yeah, you could go any which way. But yeah, they want to turn this. They want the abortion debate. That's what this really is.
Yeah.
They don't.
Well, no, this is they don't want it. They use it when they want to distract from everything else. And right now,
well, everything that they touch is broken. And that's
they're I love that 338 Canada site, the aggregator of different polling information. Mm-hmm. And the Liberals are almost in third place now. I mean, mathematically, it's 12 seats that separates the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, and the Liberals. So, you know how that works, right? 12 seats. So 12 seats means a swing of 24 seats, right? Because if you and I are tied, but suddenly you lose your seat, then I have 2 and you have 1. So one swing means 2 seats. And so it's 12 swing ridings right now will make the difference. The way we're heading, the Liberals are going to be annihilated if there was an election tomorrow, and so would the NDP, and we'd end up with a conservative government and the Bloc as an opposition, which would be crazy dynamics.
Yeah.
So the Liberals are trying to distract in every way, shape, form imaginable. I mean, they're not gaining on anything, right? Like, think about it. Right now, we're 6 weeks from the last budget where they promised that they would build 4 million homes by 2030. What did we do? We did the math. We said they needed to build a home every minute. So they should have built 18,000 homes in the last 6 weeks. They built none.
None.
So
not one was completed.
No,
Well,
no.
I was laughing about this on my last live stream because I couldn't believe Mark Miller came out talking about these prefab homes that can be completed, like the parts can be completed in 2 minutes in the factory. And then the parts can be then assembled at the site, not two, sorry, 2 hours. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
at the site they can be assembled in 3 hours. So he's talking about 5 hour houses.
I
It's
understand. Yeah,
impossible.
no,
It's
no, it's impossible.
impossible.
I think that he's making a stretch. It's the exact another similar example that people might wrap. I worked in a car plant. I worked for Chrysler.
Well, yeah,
It took
when
two
a
and a half.
car
It took
comes,
two and a half. It took 2.5 hours to assemble the car. But if you think of the time to build all the parts and deliver them, it's weeks, right? If
yeah,
not months.
yeah, you could
Yeah,
have one
yeah,
car coming out every 2 minutes on an assembly
totally.
line.
Yeah.
That's very different than start to finish. We've got and the manpower behind a factory that pulls that off. Like it takes forever to get that assembled and then put the people to task.
Yep.
You're not just moving neighborhood to neighborhood and then propping houses up in 5 minutes.
No,
It's
no,
not
no.
happening. And it's a
Yeah.
pipe dream. It's crazy to me that like first off that they have this thought in their mind that, that's all it'll take, 5 minutes to build a house. And then not realize there's almost nobody in this country making these houses, and the numbers of construction workers are diminishing year by year. They're not
They,
increasing year by year.
the liberals aren't the only ones guilty of this. I mean, so many politicians are guilty of this. They don't gut check their numbers. They don't even gut check. Yeah, like
No.
like we said, oh, we're going to build. Well, the here in Calgary is another example. I mean, we had this big controversy over rezoning and this and that, and it was brought up all the time. They're like, well, this could lead to 16,000 more new homes. And you go, we've never built 16,000 homes in 1 year in Calgary. Like the closest we've ever built in any given year in Calgary is like a minuscule number, like 650 in a year. So what makes you think that suddenly, we'd be able to build double that? We couldn't even increase it by 10%. Never mind, orders of magnitude. The politicians are out to lunch. They make
Mhm.
promises like this all the time. We're gonna solve the healthcare crisis by hiring 10,000 new nurses. From where?
Yeah,
Like
from
you're
where
gonna
you fired a bunch and you won't let them
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Why do we assume
And
you're gonna just find them? Most of
and
them
and
are
y-
taken off and going
where
somewhere else.
Yeah, and if you hire 10,000 new nurses or steal them away from another industry, then you're going to be short teachers or you're going to be short something else. I mean,
Yeah.
these problems are not the math doesn't work. They don't. It's yeah. It's
You know what you can blame it
it,
on? Have you ever heard this term? It's called affluenza.
no.
It's a made up term.
After,
It's a made up term. I think it came out about around this one kid who was a spoiled brat in the United States, and he kept getting arrested for things like for awful, really awful things, and then he kept getting let go. And it was because, at one point they let him go because the lawyer was saying that he suffers from affluenza, where he's so affluent that he doesn't know any better. And so, bear with me here. So you're talking about a bunch of people who are suffering from this affluenza that are in government, and they're just so used to throwing money at problems. The car is not working. Get another one. Just get another one.
yeah, yeah.
This isn't happening. Just hire somebody. Like not even thinking that you have to like manage the logistics of this. You're not you're not just able to materialize this kind of infrastructure out of nothing.
Well, yes. That an example of that is Gilbo's pipe dream that we're gonna force everybody to buy, and that will only be allowed to buy electric vehicles after 2030. It's like making them is part of the problem. Fueling or recharging them, disposing of them, having tires for them, storing them. They like if I gave those guys just a small problem and think out this problem with the consequences and solutions to every step along the way, they couldn't do it. So I mean, these are that's a perfect example of an absolutely insane wish, that we're only going to sell, we'll only be able to buy electric vehicles by 2030. That's like it's yeah,
Well,
no,
it's
crazy.
insane because like I think that they're not thinking of like the repercussions of this down across the all this does is it creates shortages of vehicles for everybody. If you say to the car industry by 2026, which is what they've said,
Yep.
20% of all cars bought and sold in Canada have to be electric only.
Yep.
And that's what they specified. I think they're even starting to walk it back by saying hybrid, and that opens it up. But what it does though is it sends a market signal out there that okay, well we need to like everybody wants gas or diesel, so we're gonna have to make like a list of how many cars that we could possibly get into the country because only this many electric cars are gonna sell. So then now we've got quotas. It's just basically quotas, self-imposed quotas for every manufacturer, and they're going to start making lists, and people are going to start bidding on this. The prices are going to go through the roof, and what's going to happen? People are going to dive into the used market, and they're going to start fixing older automobiles. It'd be great for me in my industry because I'll be
Mm-hmm.
fixing these things. But and you know parts manufacturers, sure, they're going to be booming over this whole thing. But you're just gonna have a stagnation. We're gonna be like Cuba,
Well,
where eventually there's gonna be old cars and a bunch of new electrics that don't work in the middle of the
I,
country.
I mean, this is a topic that I've been diving into a lot lately because I've already just looking at the sales and whatever the electric vehicles have peaked. Never, God, I live in a province here where Mother Nature taught us all a lesson this winter when it hit -40 and people were stranded everywhere. But never mind that. I mean, even just pragmatically speaking, there's not enough copper in the world to build. There's 40 kilograms of copper in every electric vehicle, and then people say, "Oh, we'll just recycle them." Whatever. No, hey. Nah, I don't even want to talk about this topic. I mean, it's what makes me happy is that these ideals eventually. I'm always confident in common sense, my engineering, other people's engineering, and real analysis, and I'm rarely wrong. Like when I do an analysis or you do an analysis and I say EVs are going to peter out, I'm confident in that because I've done an analysis and I know that Gilbo hasn't done an analysis. So and another example is this week we're in the middle right now of forest fire season, and they so desperately, I mean, God, people are pissed off. I swear to God, people are pissed off because my province and your province are not scorching infernos right now, burning down
Yeah, we're getting rained on.
because they want to be proven right. Right? They want to
Yeah,
be proven right. And I
yeah.
just sit there and go, well, you're not going to be proven right because math, science, statistics, history is not on your side. You're gambling. You're just saying, well, the planet is going to burn. And on our side, we look at the data, go, I can't see it.
No,
Can't see it.
it's just not happening. It's just not
It's just not
happening.
happening. I
But
mean,
I
everybody was,
have talked about this
yeah.
quite a bit. And one thing that's been happening when forests do catch fire in Canada, and this is not just a Canadian problem, it's also an American problem, is I think it was about 100 years ago or just over 100 years ago, there was this massive forest fire in like Washington State, somewhere in the west coast of America. And afterwards, because it was so devastating, they had this new policy of just no fires,
Yep.
just suppression only. So it's the forest fire suppression, and 100 years of that has led to the most expansive amount of fuel load in these forests, and it's a dangerous recipe. It has nothing to do with how many SUVs are on the road. It has nothing to do with, if you're using brake clean out of an aerosol can or brake clean out of a spray bottle with a pumper. It has everything to do with forest management and fuel loads. And it's actually quite dangerous because what ends up happening is instead of having a normal brush fire, which is normal to run through forests. I mean,
which will go through quickly either at ground level or skip over the crown.
yeah, and
Yeah.
people, some people have argued with me about this, like, no, forest fires aren't natural. It's not normal. Well, why would they drop tons of flammable material on the ground every year? Why? How would they survive through the evolution of trees without, having pine cones that don't even open up unless there's a fire that rolls
Yeah,
through? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. The trees have evolved needing fire.
yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
crown
yeah.
fires are bad because it kills the entire forest. It destroys everything, scorched earth, and then you've got no enzymes or soil, nutrients in the soil, things like that. Not good. And we need to smarten up about forest management. But
And
this is a narrative that they love, because when those
no,
crown fires
and
happen,
and
it
and think
proves to them right.
yeah, and think about it. We've seen repeatedly what happens when we try to interfere too much with the natural order of things. So,
Hmm.
forest fires is an example. Burn them too much, don't burn them enough. We can't seem to get it right. And water management. I live in a province right now. Everybody's screaming drought, 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 drought. How come the reservoirs are empty? It's like, how come the reservoirs are empty? Because you morons 10 years ago screamed, empty them, empty them, empty them, because we had a flood. We had a freak flood in 2013. And after the flood, everybody became panicky. And so the government passed a law forcing the dam owners, not the dam owners, but the dam owners. But the dams in Alberta are owned by the utility companies. Anyways, they're forced to keep them empty as a precaution against flooding. So they have to keep them empty until late June. So now and that's only been 10 years. Anyways, my point that I was trying to make is we can't manage simple little processes nearby. And then you got a guy like Guilbeault and Trudeau saying, oh, hey, we're going to control the whole planet's climate with a tax. Like, man, like that could go, even just the whole idea of trying to control climate, can't they just see how badly this could go? I mean, we could make things so worse. Like, just let nature do its thing, man.
I love this.
Like,
This is like the
yeah.
liberals and what they've been putting out lately. Pierre Poilievre voted against environment and climate 400 times. Record shows. Like this isn't the win they think it is.
No.
Uh, yeah, because your plan sucks. It's just an awful plan. And yeah, of course, vote against it. Vote against it, because why not have a better plan? And
Yeah.
I don't know if the Conservatives have the best plan out there, but it's way better ideas I'm hearing them float than let's get in there and tax people for using fuel. Make life more expensive for Canadians. And I've said this several times on the channel, that when people are poor, they care nothing about the environment. When people get wealthy, then they start looking around and go, hey, this place is a dump. Let's clean it up. Let's make things look a little more beautiful. But when they're in dire straits and people are poor and can't afford their houses and food and all this stuff, no, that's something I'll take care of later. And history shows that that's the case across humanity, not just
we see it currently. I mean, the oceans that are the rivers that are polluted with straws and garbage are not in Quebec. They're in that country, China and Asia and Africa and places like that. Anybody who's traveled knows exactly what you've said. I mean, in India, go to India, go to Mumbai, India, a city of 20 million people, and tell somebody, hey, you shouldn't be driving anywhere because you're going to pollute the environment, and you should find work closer to home. They're going to look at you like you're from another planet. They're going to say, yeah, like they want what we want, they want what we've had.
The things that we're throwing away, the things that our governments are taking away from us.
Yeah, tell somebody in India, you really shouldn't be burning natural gas in your kitchen to cook on. You should burn wood. It's more renewable. They're going to go, no, I want natural gas. Or you should have a solar panel. Boy, if a solar panel was the solution, the people of India would have installed solar panels on their little homes a long time ago. But they're still stuck burning, cow dung and other things. It's actually, there's some crazy sources of fuel. You ever seen those videos of people in Indonesia that go and chip off blocks of sulfur from volcanoes, and then carry down huge masses of people in some places in the world will burn sulfur, like a little yellow chunk of sulfur. It burns. It's got a really god awful smell. It'll
Yeah.
destroy your lungs, but it's fuel. I happened to travel to Nepal. I went to Nepal in 2014, and I saw ladies collecting the cow dung and smearing it on the side of the fence and drying it, and then they take the cow dung patties into their homes and light it on fire and put their little frying pan over the cow dung. Yeah, if I went to that lady and saying, yeah, you should. Sorry, I can't provide you with natural gas because that's going to kill the planet. That person's going to say, whatever, give me the natural gas.
Yeah, yeah, it's a no-brainer. It really is a no-brainer. But this is the thing. These are the kinds of things that come out of places like again with the affluenza. They come out of places like lobby groups on the left, including the World Economic Forum, these think tanks, and places where people are just oblivious to the reality of just everyday life for people.
Well, actually, your point, what you're saying, what you said earlier, that poor people really don't care as much about the environment. We're seeing it in Canada right now. The environment, I guarantee you, if the liberals are tone deaf, right? We keep telling them, read the room. Are Canadians concerned about abortions right now, or are they concerned about the planet 20 years from now, or are they concerned about putting groceries on the table, finding a place to live in, and maybe getting a car that won't fall apart on them so they can get to work? I mean, those are the things that are preoccupying Canadians, and we're no different than anybody else. If it got really, really bad here, everybody would tell Guilbeault, you can take your climate plan and shove it, because right now I don't have the luxury of thinking about that. And we're supposed to be, and then they'll argue that we're supposed to take one for the planet, and we're supposed to be the proactive people and whatnot, and we should be if we had a government that managed this country properly, and we were more prosperous like we're supposed to be. That's our role on the planet, and we're screwing up that role. We can't lead when we're having a hard time looking after ourselves at this point. That's kind of sad, right? I mean,
it's really sad.
And
the really other thing too is, like, we can't lead when we're fooling our own people. Like, when you have a recycle system that's absolutely just it's a ritual more than it is recycling. You put the things in the box, you send it off, you think that you're doing the planet a good thing, but it ends up on a barge going all the way to the Philippines.
Are you referencing that documentary that just came out recently?
I didn't even know about it. I just know about these things.
It's not even a documentary. It was like I think it was I hate to give credit to the CBC, but I think it was the CBC just interviewed a couple of people, and then took a lady who was like absolutely in favor of recycle, and they took her on a trip where they followed garbage in 3 different cities recycle in 3 different cities, and she was shocked because just like you pointed out, the recycle in one city was ending up in an incinerator where it's turned into waste heat. In another place, it was being put on a barge and sent to New York City. And in another place, it was going to a landfill. And she was shocked. She she was like, what? They've been lying to us? It's like, lady, they've been lying to you about recycling. That's not the only thing they've been lying to you about.
About a lot of things. But if you were to go out publicly and say we should end the recycling program, people would be up in arms. No, we got to save the planet. That's what we're doing.
No, that's a sacred cow now. That's a sacred cow.
It is a sacred cow, but it's crazy. Like, to hear stories about recycling getting sent on a diesel barge to go all the way to the Philippines to be sorted through, and have them attempt to send it back. They were mad at Canada over this. It was incredible. And they tried to send it back, and I think it ended up going to like Thailand or somewhere else where they just incinerated it. And we spent all that money. That's taxpayers' money going to burn a bunch of diesel, and you think that you're saving the environment. It really is ridiculous.
I do my part to recycle. My wife's always on my case about this one, because yes, I generally do my part to recycle. But if I'm in my office and I have a beer, Sometimes I just throw it in a garbage can here. And she was like, you can't do that. I'm like, honey, it's hardly going to make a difference. I'm like, even in aluminum cans, an example, the aluminum cans, it takes more energy to recycle in an aluminum can than it takes to make a new one. It's sad, but it is what it is. And so pragmatic Marty knows that in some instances there's a better way to solve a problem, and recycling is not always the case.
Well,
It's
we do have
yeah,
good ways of doing things, and but the
yeah,
recycling program. Like, here's one thing I want to point out. Do you remember the old triangle picture? It was a triangle, and it was arrows that went all in these directions.
almost circular on the ends, the triangles. Yeah, yeah.
It's because there was three words they used in that. It was the three R's. We never talk about these anymore. Reduce, reuse,
Reuse.
and then recycle. The
Yep,
first two
yep.
are probably the more important ones. Like, we've gotten away from reusing and reducing our footprint.
You're actually talking about something that's near and dear. I'll give you an example. I get criticized in the backcountry all the time by people who say something like you should recycle, and I bring that up. I'm like, no, I reuse. So like, yes, I when I bring a portable stove with naphtha fuel in it, I'm reusing that stove time after time after time after time. When I have an Nalgene water bottle that I refill, I'm reusing it. But then usually the person lecturing me has the latest tent and the newest pair of boots and the newest backpack. And I'm like, why are you buying a new tent every year when your other one's still good? It's like, oh, well, this one's modern, it's lighter, it's this and that. It's like, so you're preaching to me about recycling, but you're not reusing. So yeah, I hate hypocrisy like that. People who oh, yeah,
Well, I agree.
nah,
I agree
yeah,
100%.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
this is the kind of mentality that I think a lot of people are more in tune with. People who actually care about the environment. And this is why I want to I keep talking about this. The liberals, they're environmental, like, emphasis on mental, whereas we should be moving towards something that's more ecological. Again, emphasis on the logical. We can have incinerators that produce energy from our waste products. We can encourage people to reduce the amount of waste that they have and reuse a lot of stuff. This is
Mhm.
great. These are great things that can move forward, and we can all have your cake and eat it too. It's good, and the technologies that have come out now for incineration, they have new words for it. PR teams have gotten in. They call them like energy. Whatever device instead of incinerator. But yeah, with modern catalyst technology, they're not spewing out a bunch of soot and gross stuff into the environment. Oh, it's just mostly water vapor
Yeah,
and
yeah, no, no. The products of very, very clean combustion are just water and carbon dioxide. Some of the plastics are a little tougher because the plastics, when they release chlorine and stuff like that. But again, pragmatically speaking, release that chlorine and return it into salt and dump it in the ocean, man. I mean, there's more salt on this planet than just about any other substance, and salt is sodium and chlorine. So everybody panics over things that are basic elements. We're always dealing with the same elements. The lighter the elements, like everything, there's 200 and whatever 38 elements in the periodic table, but our day-to-day lives we use about 60,
Mhm.
and it's always the same ones, man. It's carbon, nitrogen, chlorine. And when people say, oh, you're burning and you're releasing the chlorine, and like, look around you, man. It's everywhere. Carbon dioxide. Well, that's another one. I mean, I that was a question I asked today. In fact, for me this week for me has been preoccupied by finances. We didn't even talk about the Canada Pension Plan. For me, this week has been preoccupied by climate because of the forest fires and the carbon tax. And I keep asking that, like, when are people going to wake up and finally realize that they've been lied to? Like, this whole climate catastrophe is not happening. I'm going to get shit for this, but I'll take shit all day long, man. The climate catastrophe is not what it is. I mean, people are upset. There's 10 forest fires in Alberta today. 10. 10. 10, 10, 10. And when I look at them, even 10 doesn't mean anything, because there's one burning down south here, and whoever started that one was a persistent little bugger because it's been raining for 4 days. So somebody went out of their way to start one down south. It got extinguished in a day, and then you go look at it, and it's classified as man-made with a 0.01 hectares burn. That just means that some conservation officer found a smoldering pit somewhere left behind from partiers on the long weekend. It wasn't even a fire, but it's classified as a fire. They put it out, and it goes into statistics so that now they can say, oh, we had 347 fires, but including one that was, 0.01 hectares. So
that's unbelievable. Yeah.
But, no, I was going to say, and then, I'm still busy busting down the myths, showing that information. I mean, I've been sharing the Alberta website that shows the current statistics like daily. I've taken to sharing it daily to show people what's going on. I was amazed. I was driving back here, and there's actual commercials by the government of Alberta saying, put out your forest fire, put out your fire because 70% of fires are started by humans. I was surprised they had that in a radio commercial.
Yeah.
God bless Danielle. I do still think Danielle is playing the cards very well like that. Like she's fighting Ottawa one battle at a time, and she's doing her own myth busting. I love that. But then I went to the website. Yeah. So it's black and white on the website, man. Actually, we've had about 350 fires. Guess how many were started by lightning?
What, 40%?
Well, you read my tweets. No, one. So we had one
okay.
fire. Out of the 345 so far this year, one was started by lightning. 70%, like 250 were man-made, and then the other 80 are undetermined at this point.
So the British Columbia government website, they show in their stats, it's about 60% is from lightning, and 40% is 40% is lightning, and 60% is human caused one way or another.
Yeah, you guys might have more thunderstorms than we do.
Well, and they said lightning, but it's like lightning and other causes, that kind of thing, right? So natural causes.
Hey, did you guys have the big Aurora Borealis?
We did.
Storm?
We did, and holy cow, I got to see it. We don't usually see it this far south. It's that was impressive. That was really.
But that's another example. I enjoyed having that, and again, it was a great teaching opportunity because. I was telling people, like, what do you think causes these Aurora Borealis? And they're like, I don't know. Well, obviously the sun's activity. I'm like, yeah, the sun's activity. Like,
pretty impressive.
Very impressive. And then why is it up there? It's like, because of our magnetic fields. Yes, very impressive. Our magnetic fields. And guess what our magnetic field does? It protects us from all this radiation. And it's shifting. And when it's shifting, it manifests itself in a really gorgeous way. But could it also not explain why there's some climate change? I can't resist being a smartass with people.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
The sun probably has the most to do with what the temperature.
Not probably, it absolutely does. Yeah. Hey, we're running out of time and topic, but I wanted to. I mentioned it briefly, and we'll come back to it next week. But today was also very few people talked about it. The Canada Pension Plan released its annual report today.
Okay.
The Canada Pension Plan doesn't run on the December to December. It runs on the March 31st cycle. So the end of the year for the Canada Pension Plan is March 31st. So they just released their numbers. Not that good, getting their 2-3% nominal return, which means after they've factored in inflation. So inflation's affecting. That's one of the things I want to talk about. Everybody's like all worried about the Canada Pension Plan's good and debt's not that bad. You know what? You're going to feel the pinch of this reckless debt in all sorts of places. You're feeling it on interest rates. You're feeling it on your mortgage. And it's going to suck if people have to feel it on their expected pension down the road. And I'm looking at the pension plan. I'm going to look at it. It's not as well financed as people want to believe. Like I look at it and it makes me a little nervous. So
this is why Alberta wanted out, right? They wanted to get out. And people started looking into it and going, oh wow, we maybe every other province should get out of this too. This is awful.
I became so well versed in the Canada Pension Plan in the last 3 months. It's incredible how well I've read up on it. and how convoluted it is. It's a very convoluted plan. Like it's very complicated to explain. So we'll save that for next week. But just wanted to throw it out there. The other one I wanted to throw out there, maybe you have some thoughts on this one, but you guys, the BC Conservatives this week, to me, appears where there finally was that that crossover on the popular vote where the Conservatives are ahead of the NDP. Maybe
That's
it
right.
doesn't manifest in seats, but are we witnessing something for real? Like you guys are going to go Conservative, or
It's
you are?
it's happening. It's happening here in British Columbia, and it's
Yeah,
great. Like I'm excited about it. You and I both got the chance to meet John Rustad. He's the leader of the Conservatives when we were in Calgary for the Tucker Carlson event. So he came out just like I did from British Columbia to go check that out. He is a genuine sounding guy. When he speaks
yeah.
about the things that he's talking about, he's very candid, and people like that. People like that about, characters. When you get the candid moments with Pierre Polyev, that's when people like him. When you get the more scripted slogans, that kind of thing, people are
Yeah, yeah.
him ha. But like people want an
So
authentic
what's
character.
John saying that's resonating? Does he have a sort of a specific plan? Is he talking about, I don't know, cuts, or what's he talking about? Common sense?
Well, he's
Is
talking about common sense. That seems to be like the driver across Canada for anyone who's running on the conservative side,
yeah,
piggybacking off of Pierre with that concept. But here's just some things like. First off, John was kicked out of. I think it was the Liberals at the time. He was kicked out of there because of his stance on COVID. With this, BC United was the party. He's been on the side of liberty ever since. He's been on the side of liberty since the beginning, and
yeah.
that didn't mesh well with them. And so, he joined in with the Conservatives, and he's been running on that. This is a time where people are looking at what's happened in British Columbia over the past, I don't know how many years. The Conservatives haven't held government in like 100 years, something crazy in British
Jeez.
Columbia. And
Yeah.
between the BC Liberals, which are now called the BC United,
BC United.
they had to rebrand because of Justin Trudeau and his thing. They're not doing so hot. They were actually way ahead of the Conservatives, and then people started seeing like where their stance is on a lot of these issues. They don't want to bring the nurses back, for example, just like the NDP. We have shortages in healthcare. People can't get a family doctor in this province. It's crazy, but we are the last standout for provinces with this. There's all
Well,
kinds of issues.
even the Canadian Army, even the Canadian Forces, finally said we need to bring back soldiers that were expelled during COVID because they're so short. Now, I don't think many of those soldiers are going to go back.
Why would they? They were
Um,
treated so terribly.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Um,
awful. And in British Columbia, we've also got the carbon tax, which is all us, right? So meanwhile, all these other provinces are getting a little bit of a payola back, which covers nothing of it. We get none of it. We get
you get
nothing.
none. Yeah,
We
yeah.
get none, and we get to pay all this money to the federal government. The BC NDP, they've done all kinds of nasty things. In British Columbia, car insurance, ICBC, is they switched from a tort system to no fault insurance.
No fault.
And
Yeah.
oh boy, they've brought in all this windfall of money because of it. Why? Because they don't pay out when people are deserving of compensation for something that happens in a car accident. It's really bad what's happening, and there's tribunals. I've had episodes about this. Anybody who wants to check this out, search in the name Wes Musio. He came on and talked about it at length about what's going on with this system, and he was a lawyer here in British Columbia. He's been fighting against this concept, but they've moved forward with that. Maybe with the Conservatives, we might see that go back to a tort system. We might see things go back to some semblance of normality. And let me tell you, the BC United, they're campaigning on the fact that John Rustad and what his candidates have been saying is a little too far in the conspiracy theory territory. and it's just unsavory for the average voter. We know what they're
we're
saying, and we know that they're just browbeating these ideas and saying, no,
we're
you
we're,
can't say
we're
that, you can't get into this, you can't talk about that.
we're seeing the same thing in Alberta. It's a topic that's been front and center lately. In fact, I was at an event last week in Edmonton, and we had 16 MLAs come to our event. That's remarkable. But and our event is around similar to the event that's going to happen in your neck of the woods next month, of uniting the right, making sure we're coordinated, and we want to talk about these things. I mean, here in Alberta, there is a debate. We're still talking about what happened during COVID. And some people want to just say, nah, this is behind us. We want to
Mhm.
put it in the past and we don't want to talk about it. And there's a small group that's gaining popularity and getting louder that's saying, no, we want to talk about this because we don't want it to happen again. We want to learn from it. And in some cases, we want some people to be held accountable for it. And we talk to MLAs who are like, they're worried because some people, some of their colleagues, some of their former colleagues are going to be found to have been in the wrong. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter, man. It's the truth. And if the truth comes out, the truth will come out. So you better be on the right side of the truth. Because if you're in one of these groups that for whatever reason is trying to hide the truth, that never works out for people. So
No,
if
no,
so
it doesn't.
I'm sensing that John's perhaps in that camp, right? Trying to make the truth come out, and even if it's unpalatable for some, the truth has to come out.
Well, and that's exactly where it is. So he's
Yeah.
saying all the things that Canadians in British Columbia want to hear, and essentially, yeah, nobody wants to take responsibility for the actions that they did, and that even the BC United. Now, there were talks before about BC United, perhaps getting together with the Conservatives, and that was when the Conservatives were polling very poorly, and the BC United was polling well, and they just walked away from the table, the United. And now that it's turned the other way, they're like, well, can we perhaps?
Well, I saw
And
that this week. Was there a tweet? Was there any truth to the fact that John tried to attract the guy from BC United, or was that just all a made up story? Like they weren't in chats to merge parties, were
no, they
they?
weren't in chats
No,
to
no.
merge parties. They were in chats to negotiate. Like, hey, do you have people on your side that would like maybe come over our camp?
Yeah, yeah.
Things like that. And if it was definitely not a merger. It was definitely not a
Okay,
merger, but
okay.
it was like, hey, you guys are our opponents, and we don't want a vote splitting situation. Perhaps we can reach agreements. And well, they weren't talking practically, and so they walked away from the negotiation table on
Okay,
that one.
okay.
So that's the end of that. And that
Yeah,
was
interesting. From if I'm very happy for you guys. I mean, I've said it all along. I want to help you guys as much as possible. I'd love nothing more than to have real conservative neighbors on both sides. And but the election's 5 months away, so a lot can happen. But yeah, the momentum, the swing looks good.
it's looking
Looks really
great. I
good.
mean,
Yeah.
when you look at what I mean, BC United's kind of falling to the wayside because they're not talking about the actual issues. We look at what the NDP have done. No fault insurance. The whole drug problem that's happening on the
Oh,
streets, and then trying to like negotiate with Trudeau to reel it back a little bit, and him refusing for so long. Yeah, it's a disaster. It's a absolute unmitigated disaster,
yeah, yeah,
and it's got to
yeah,
end.
yeah.
It's got to end. So hopefully we can move on and bring a little bit of what they're saying, common sense, to British Columbia.
Right on, right on. I only have one other story on here. It's not even a big one, but Klaus Schwab.
I was trying to segue to that earlier and brought in the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
like,
Let's
well,
not
that
segue. Let's just
let's
stop
just
beating around the bush.
yeah,
Let's go
yeah.
right to it. Yeah, yeah.
So Klaus Schwab, it looks like he might be uh, giving up his seat as the leader of the World Economic Forum.
They didn't say why. I'm guessing he's getting older and unhealthy, but
I mean, you could hope.
yeah, 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 yeah. My hope is that there is no replacement. My hope
Mhm.
is that this signals the end of a really terrible movement, But it might not be. I mean, we have, or I hope that somebody like maybe Chrystia Freeland steps in that role and makes it worse for her and for the, that the WEF just goes down, and that would be a godsend for us if she stepped into that role, or Mark Carney or whatever. I mean, I'm not, I haven't even given it too much attention. I really don't care, but I just heard that Klaus Schwab is stepping down.
Yeah, I don't know if Chrystia Freeland's vying for a seat. I know she's on the board of trustees, and
Yeah.
infamously, she wrote that book Plutocrats years ago, when she was a reporter. It was titled "The Rise of the Super Rich and the Fall of Everyone Else." I had no idea. Like, I hadn't read the book.
Was she predicting her own life?
Well, I guess it wasn't a scathing rebuke of it. It was like, it was praising this concept, and she's been actively part of it for so many years, and in her role as deputy prime minister, and even before that, as even years ago when she was a young student and lobbying for Ukrainian stuff. And there's no accident that all of this is kind of shaped its way the way it has. I'd like to see the World Economic Forum be a thing of the past. I would like to see lobby groups like this fade into obscurity with other awful lobby groups like communist lobby groups and other forms of social. This term gets thrown around quite a bit, fascism, fascists, or whatever. But the idea of what Klaus Schwab calls the what does he call it? Stakeholder capitalism. It's basically just a rebrand of Mussolini or Hitler's fascism, or what they've established in China after the 1970s, what they've established over there. It's not good. We don't want it here. When people learn about what it actually is, even people who are like roughly on the left, they go, no, I like free markets, thanks.
Two things. People have never learned their lesson. I mean, even today, there was a TikTok video circulating of people from like Halifax or whatever flying to Toronto for like a communist convention or whatever. I mean, those kids were the epitome of spoiled, complaining that they grew up oppressed and they wanted, anyways. Second thought on that. If you have Netflix, go watch that series on the Cold War and the bomb. It's a 6-part series. Fabulous. Fascinating. I mean, it's a story you and I know. We've known it, but I find, Netflix nowadays, some of these guys are doing like great documentaries where they bring it all so well together. So it's a 6-part series on I'll tell you how good it is. It's so good that I was watching it and my wife was sitting in the room and watching it with me, just sort of barely paying attention. But she was asking me questions, and she was literally saying like, that's going on right now. I'm like, yeah, honey, it's going on right now. Cause it was talking about like, how communists attacked the educated, the farmers took over the farm, starved people, did this, did that. I'm like, yeah, there's some serious parallels of what's going on in the world now. Yep. And what went on many times in history, a lot of evil people who want to control other people and pretend to have good intentions. And I think Schwab, for me, always fell in that category. Well, I mean, Grace, he's a supervillain. Look at him.
Well, he is. And I mean, there was a particular interview. I don't have the picture up here, but in the background, in his office, he had a bust of Lenin. I mean, this guy is not about free markets. He's not about he's not liberty oriented. And that's exactly where I stand. I think my biggest fight in this whole thing is the fight for liberty, and I want to push that fight as far as I can. Whether I'm here in Canada or I'm down in the United States, I'm going to be pushing this massive push for liberty.
Absolutely. Hey, before we go, did you see? God, I'm not weird stories. Did you see? Speaking of supervillains, did you see King Charles unveiling his official portrait?
My favorite of the memes was the one with Venkman scanning it. It looked like the portrait from Ghostbusters 2.
Jesus, what? Like he even did a double take when he but he had to see it, right? There's no way that he just poses and then gives absolute artistic freedom to whoever's drawing that picture. There's no way. There's no way.
I
And
don't know.
so,
I mean,
yeah,
they really like their. I mean, it's so weird. Like, if you don't want to look like a bunch of Satanists, why do you do stuff that makes you look like a bunch of Satanists?
Satanists. Yeah,
I
yeah.
really, I won't get it. I don't think I'll ever get that about them.
Yeah, no, that's what again, I'm picking on my wife today because she's so cute, so naive on some of these subjects. And then she sees that picture and I'm like, now do you believe me when I say there's something going on? Like, she absolutely doesn't want to believe in anything like there,
No.
even something as obvious as the Epstein Island or whatever. It's like, how can you if I bring up that there's a potential relationship between Justin Trudeau and the Picton farm, she's like, no, there isn't. It's like, well, okay,
Well, that's a
whatever.
story
Just
maybe we'll have to save for next week because that's
if
an
he's still
interesting.
alive, right? Because Picton got the shit kicked out of him this week.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah, yeah,
news.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the news. And I didn't know certain things about him that he's really like mentally impaired. Like he's not a smart guy, and like all of the crimes that he says that he was gonna commit, he wouldn't have had enough intellect to pull off, and especially
He,
for so long. It's a
I, I've
fishy story, and
he,
it's worth diving into.
he's a fall guy for sure. He's not a mastermind. Well, he could be a. Is he a creepy guy who's done bad things? Absolutely. Is he a brilliant mastermind? No freaking way. No
No
freaking way.
way. And
No way.
apparently
No.
he had something where he said like when he was being arrested, like, oh boy, when they dig into this, there's gonna be a lot of people going down with me. And none of that happened. None of that happened. So we might have like an Epstein Island in the shape of a pig farm in Canada. It's really crazy with
Crazy.
what
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is. Anyway, Marty, where can people find you?
Yeah. Marty Up North on Twitter. Something's happened. Yeah, Marty Up North on Twitter. Marty Up North on YouTube. But as I always say every week, I'm not very active on YouTube these days. But come find me on Twitter and send me DMs, text, share information, comment, whatever. I just love engaging with everybody,
Perfect. We'll see
including
y'all.
you, my man. Yeah. Good luck with the move. So, just in closing, we're still on for next week, but you're going to be in the new place next week,
Yeah,
or
no, I'll still kind of half be in this place and in the other place. I'll figure something out, but we'll be on for next week.
yeah, yeah, awesome. And then in about what? How many weeks away from a whole month before we go live on stage in Victoria. That's gonna be awesome.
That's going to be great. I'll leave a link in the description for everybody so you can go get tickets if you want to join and we'll obviously anything that we can live stream we'll be getting on that. So stay tuned
Absolutely.
and go check out the links.
Good night, everyone. Cheers.